tuned to John Digweed Friday nights on Kiss 100. Continuous music in the mix between midnight and 2. Joining us in the studio tonight, we've got P.O.B or P.O.B. He's got a new album out on Monday called The Essence. That's on Platipus. So we're going to be playing some tunes off that album, as well as playing some tracks that have influenced him over the last few years. We're going to start off with Gravitational Arch of 10, and this is Vapour Space. You're in tune to John Digweed Friday nights on Kiss 100. You've been listening to Gravitational Arch of 10, that's Vapour Space. Following that, Luna, which is a new track off the album Essence by P.O.B. And he's joining us in the studio tonight. Hi Paul, how's it going?
Very well, thanks John.
In the last track we played, Luna, is a collaboration you did with Boyd. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about the collaborations on the album with the other DJs and producers?
I actually decided to collaborate quite a lot on this album. Two reasons really. Firstly, I love working in the studio with other people. You can vibe off each other, and also it's a lot faster in the studio, I think, when you've got two people, because one person can have an idea and the other person can A&R it. You know, they can say, yeah, that's a great idea, or no, I'm not sure if it's working. So it's a lot faster than working on your own. Also, each person that you work with brings in their own musical style, so you end up with a much more varied album. This next tune's not on the album, but it's something I love. It's Schiller and Ruhe, the Humate remix.
Friday nights on Kiss with me, John Digweed, playing tracks off P.O.B's new album Essence, and also tracks that have influenced him over the years. Just been listening to Schiller, that's Ruhe, the Humate remix. What made you choose that one, Paul?
Oh, I love that track. It's melodic, it's got a really cool groove, and the strings at the end just lift the energy up for me and lift the emotion.
Is that what you try and achieve in your music?
Yeah, I do like making records with all those elements. I love music basically, so I love the emotion involved in different chords and things like that. But also I do like the quirky electronic stuff as well, and there's some of that on the album. When I was working with DJ Patrick Reid, we just had a ball basically with mad noises and a very stompy groove. The result was The Booth.
Friday nights on Kiss 100, doing something a little bit different tonight. P.O.B in the studio playing tracks off the album Essence. Just been listening to Z Booth. Over the years, Paul, you've done some great remixes. Funtopia featuring Jimmy Polo, Sasha's Magic, Ray's Break for Love, and also Anomaly, Calling Your Name. What sort of makes you choose to do a remix? What do you look out for in a track, and are you very choosy? Because you don't do that many, but when you do them, you do a very good job.
I am very choosy about remixes. I take them very seriously when I do them, and I spend probably as long as I would on one of my own tracks. So I try not to do too many, because otherwise it takes away from me doing my own music. What I do look for when I'm doing a remix is, firstly, I've obviously got to like the track, and secondly, if it's a big tune or if it will get me noticed a little bit more and help me with my career in music, then obviously that's a consideration. This next track actually does both of those things. It's my most recent remix, and it's Bedrock, Heaven Sent.
Nights on Kiss 100 with me, John Digweed, and our guest P.O.B. in the studio. Thank you very much for that remix of Heaven Sent. Massive tune for me on the dance floor all of last year, so yeah, that still does it for me in a big way. On the subject of remixes, do people ever remix your stuff, and who do you sort of usually choose to do the job? You know, what do you look out for in remixes? Are you looking for someone who's hot at the moment, or someone that you've respected over a long time?
It's a bit of both, really. Usually I try and choose a remixer that brings in a different style to my main mix, to give it appeal to different people. But also, sometimes somebody just comes up straight out of the blue, like Northface. I didn't know too much about them, and I heard a remix that they'd done of a track called Melodica by Leama, and I thought, yeah, this is great, and I'd love them to do a remix of one of my tunes. So that's what's going to happen on the next release. So this is Northface's remix of Melodica by Leama.
Friday nights on Kiss 100 with me, John Digweed, doing something a little bit different than normal. Not the continuous mix we normally have, but we've got something a little bit special. P.O.B in the studio talking about his album The Essence, and I've been a big fan of you for many years. How did you get into the scene? What was your sort of starting point, and who influenced you at the start?
Well, I've been into dance music as long as I can remember, actually. First of all, I started out with a full-time job, and I bought myself an Atari computer and slowly built up a studio and started making records. And it got to a point where I could actually stop work and concentrate full-time on the music, which was great. I met Simon Berry in those early days as well, and we started collaborating basically because we had very similar ideas about what we liked in the music scene at the time. So this next track is a track with Simon Berry that I did for the album, and it's called Turkish Bizarre.
Digweed, Kiss 100.
Friday nights on Kiss 100 with P.O.B in the studio playing his album Essence. That's the track Turkish Bazaar with a collaboration there with Art of Trance. That's not the first time you've worked with Simon Berry from Art of Trance. I can remember Sea Dog Clanger was a massive track for Sash and myself at Renaissance. How was the scene then for you, and you know where were you going out, and what was sort of your influences?
There were some groundbreaking records back then for me, like the Vapour Space, Gravitational Arch of 10 we played at the start of the show, and this one also had a big effect on me. It's Slam and Positive Education.
Friday nights on Kiss with me, John Digweed, between midnight and 2. I've got P.O.B in the studio, got time for just one more track before we head into the break. Do you want to tell us a little bit about this one?
Yeah, the last track I'm going to play is a track called Today. This is a track I did with LA-based DJ Taylor, and also with a guest vocalist by Louise Dufresne. Taylor's just a great guy to work with. He really pushes me to experiment with the production and take the sound manipulation to the limit. So it's kind of emotional journey, but also it's got some very unique sounds in there, which I'm very proud of.
John Digweed on Kiss 100. Kiss 100. John Digweed on Kiss 100.
Friday nights on Kiss 100 with me, John Digweed, just about coming to the end of tonight's show. Got to say many thanks there. Tokyo's DJ19 mixing up exclusively for Kiss 100. Also got to thank P.O.B for dropping in the studio as well. Really good to do something a little bit different tonight. That's about it. Hope you enjoyed the show. Don't forget, if you've got any comments or feedback about this show, you can leave them on the Bedrock message board, www.bedrock.org.uk. Go to the Kiss Friday Nights in the Mix section, leave any comments or feedback there, or just email me at john.digweed@kiss100.com. That's about it. I'll be back next Friday night for some more great music between midnight and 2. Whatever you're up to this weekend, hope you have a good one.